How do I know when environmental control solutions for temperature, light energy, water quality, chemistry, and flow go down? We are going to show you a better way on each one of those and why today's reefers are more successful than ever. Starting with that first one, temperature between the heater, your chiller, a furnace, air conditioner failures, breaker shorts, open or close windows, and human error. Nearly all of you are going to run into a serious temperature issue, but here's how it doesn't have to affect your success rate.
The obvious partial answer here is pick up the best gear you can, but that's not what we're talking about, because a belief that a selected piece of gear is impervious to failure is the actual problem. Even the best goes down. This is about redundancy. How do we know when it does go down and then have enough time to do something about it?
Well, there's two approaches or methods to this. One is absolute attention to the tank and temperature, never taking your eyes off of it. Second is some sort of alarm, visual, audible, or whatever is going off to warn you that something's happening.
So starting with absolute attention to temperature, meaning, man, I never miss a beat. I will know for sure. How would I know? I mean, really ask yourself that. How would you know if the temperature was hitting 83 or it was hitting 73? Well, I know the first way.
Yeah, I guess one of the first ways is just stuff is dying. You walk by your tank. Temperature is one of those ones that I can't visually see temperature. I can't look at a body of water and say, you know, that's 30 degrees, 50 degrees, 78, 80 degrees. The only thing we have to walk by and look for is stuff dying, and that's probably way too late.
That might be a little aggressive. Maybe it's not dying. Maybe it actually just looks like,
not so good.
I don't know, I'm really unhappy.
Yeah.
So somewhere between unhappy and dying is a measurement of temperature maybe. But another one is the room is hot or cold.
Yeah.
And a lot of people haven't actually connected this thing. But if I walk into the room and it's 60 degrees, it's pretty likely my heaters are not keeping up with that anymore. If I walk into the room and it's 90 degrees, the tank is probably pretty hot as well.
Well, if either one of those two things are happening, stuff's dying or the room's hot or cold, the next absolute attention piece you could do is walk by and stick your finger in. And again, this is another one there. I just can't really tell the temperature. I don't know how many times I've stuck my finger in a 78-degree tank and thought, man, that's cold.
You know what? This is one that I am pretty good at.
Yeah.
I can actually feel like I can put my hand in there and say, you know what? This kind of feels like 75. Or why is this bathtub water? You know, but here's the thing: is I don't put my hand in the tank very often, so the dipstick method is not all that good. And I'm certainly not going to do that every single day or walk up to the tank. So this is not a very effective method for me. But here's a good one. A digital display, right? So that could be digital display because your heater actually has like a digital readout on it.
Yep.
In that case, you could, hide this thing in a place where you could never see it underneath your sump, which is no longer really a display because who's going to go down there and look at it? You could actually put it next to the tank. You could walk up. There's also those little thermometers, like there's a big temp. Yeah, so I could just that one looks a little bit better maybe than the controller and all the cords coming out of it. So you can just put that on the wall. I could walk up, see it's 78, and every single time that I'm engaging with the tank, which is usually multiple times a day, I would be able to tell, is it 78 degrees or not?
Yeah, there's another piece of this that's a little more rudimentary, technology as far as temperature. And that's just one of those rainbow colored stickers that you stick on the side of your tank, and it tells you, hey, it's 80 degrees when it's bright red, it's 50 degrees or 60 degrees when it's blue. But I can walk by, anytime I walk by, I can just glance at the sticker and, and look and be like, that's about the right.
Yeah, this isn't about absolute accuracy. It's just like way, way, way outside of the scope. I actually asked the team to bring in those little stickers. We don't sell those. But
you could stick them on your sump too if you don't want it on your display.
But I would want it. I put it somewhere on the side of your tank where it's not an eyesore, but you could walk up and just kind of see, like at a glance, hey, in the range of 78 degrees or whoa, 72. what happened? So a little sticker, but also an audible or visual alarm. So something's like flashing.
Yeah.
So some of the aquarium controllers or the heater controllers will flash at you if they're outside the range. I don't know of any of them that do audible yet offhand.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi Inkbird, or the Inkbirds in general, does have a loud audible beeping noise when it's off of the outside of the ranges that you set.
See, there you go. Learn something every day. So if you got an audible alarm when I walk up to the tank, or somebody in the household's like,
a noise.
Your tank is beeping. And run, right? This is what you want. When you have absolute attention, the more ways that you would notice, the more ways that you'll save the tank from the inevitable. All right, next up though is real-time monitoring and notifications of temperature issues. This means the moment that it happens, or at least really close to, you know about it and you can do something about it. And there's a bunch of ways here that you probably didn't think of, meaning everybody knows that an aquarium controller or monitor will do this for you.
Yes.
But there's actually some ways you could do this that you may not have thought about.
Yeah, one of the ways is a Wi-Fi heater controller. Again, the Inkbird Wi-Fi controller. This connects to your phone when you're nearby, and it will tell you that something's wrong. Maybe that's in the middle of the night, and you set that alert from that application to wake you up in the middle of the night and nothing else. But that is one. Wi-Fi, these smart devices that can actually link to your phone when you're nearby and let you know that something's gone wrong.
You're gonna see more and more of these like smart devices come out.
Oh,
the aquarium controller, obviously. But really, man, every single piece of gear, it should be at this point capable of saying, hey, I'm broken, come fix me.
Right.
This is the next one, which is kind of strange, actually, is the Seachay return pump. This is a return pump.
Yeah.
All it does is pump water for me, but it also tells me the temperature of my tank is off. It's Wi-Fi connected, and actually a cool, different add-on solution to a totally unrelated product.
Yeah, this one really speaks to me in that it's not Wi-Fi in that I have to be in the vicinity of the pump to actually get a signal from it. There's a lot of those types of products out in our industry for that with that compatibility. The Seachay though talks to your router, and if it's not talking to your router, it will tell you, hey, I'm not connected. But the biggest part that we're talking about here, temperature-wise, is it's not reading the inside temperature of the pump or the operating temperature of the pump. It's actually reading the water column temperature, and because it's connected to Wi-Fi at home, whether you're there or not, it'll actually send you, hey, I'm out of tolerance.
So when you're picking out a return pump, one of them will pump water, and the other one will tell you the temperature is also out of whack in your tank. You can pick. But the devices, the point of this is devices are getting smarter and smarter. The next one, obviously, is that monitor and controller. So Apex being by far the most popular one in our industry, it will tell you the moment that temperature changed. So, I peg this thing at 78, tell me anytime that it hits 78.5 or 77.5. You can put it anywhere you want, and you can do progressive alarms, meaning I can set it up to send me phone, email, or push notifications based on 78.5. But at 83, I could set up audible and visual alarms to go off saying, hey, dummy, you're asleep, your tank is dying, and you should go save it. I want that audible alarm. I want a horn to go off and say, come save me, I'm here, I need you. And it does go beyond actually just the tank itself as well. Yeah, so
with the monitor controller, you can expand temperature probes and things like that. So you could add a bunch of temperature probes on modern aquarium controllers. In which case, I can monitor the tank itself on its own. I can monitor the sump individually in case those two get disconnected. The sump might actually be still heating, but the tank might be getting cold. And I also have that ambient room. I can put a temperature probe just in my living room or in my office and know that somebody left the window on, or that the AC got left on when I was gone, or the heater's up, or any one of those things. I can actually know that my ambient room temperature, my tank temperature, my sump temperature individually are off, and then go make the proper corrections for it.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I like a lot, because a lot of people do. They just stick a temp probe in the sump, call it a day. But I don't actually want to know just the temperature of the sump. I want to know the actual tank itself. Sometimes you can put it in the overflow if you do it carefully, set it up. But the cool part of the precursor element is the primary heater for the tank or chiller is actually your air conditioning and your furnace. Meaning almost all of us have our homes pretty close to 70 degrees in the house, give or take a couple degrees. What happens though when that goes off? Meaning I could wait until my tank is at 83, or I could just know, man, whatever happened, the heat in my house went out and it is now 40 degrees in there. And I can go stop this problem beforehand. And in fact, I can also maybe call up the furnace guy, and so I don't have to live in a freezing cold house as well. Get it during the day. And the same thing with the air conditioning, leaving windows open, little fingers touch the thermostat, whatever. Knowing the temperature of that room is the precursor and making sure that we catch this as fast as humanly possible. Now, the one part that we're not going to touch on a whole lot today, but you can also set up these controllers to actually solve the problem.
Yep.
You know, it's not that I have to run and go do it. It's the heater got stuck on, turn it off. You know, if you the AC isn't on, somebody left a window open, we'll turn on a fan, man. It is just that easy.
The next component we want to be aware of if something were to hit the fan is chemistry. This is calcium alkalinity, magnesium over or under doses, potential salinity issues, whether they're immediate or gradual, catastrophic pH issues. There's quite a few of these chemistry ones that we want to catch right now.
Many of these you have minutes to hours to catch, and the longer it goes, the harder it will be to solve, and the lower the likelihood that there'll be a positive outcome. Chemistry, absolute attention. Me and the tank, man, we're linked. We understand each other. And the first thing I would notice is stuff is dying again or looks unhealthy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the pH is skyrocketing, the alkalinity is skyrocketing, salinity plummeted, all kinds of different things. Well, yeah, actually the problem with that is that a lot of those, like obviously dying, but even looks unhealthy, is end stage, man. This isn't like where I want to catch it and prevent it. It's like so close to kicking the bucket, man, when I visually would notice it just walking by the tank. So what are some other things, though, that you would notice?
Yeah, one thing with chemistry that happens, it's happened to you before, cloudy tank. Like you walk into the office, you walk up, you wake up in the morning and go look at your tank, you come home from work, and your tank is just this white cloud of something. This is, you know, really speaks towards precipitate, overdosing the tank. I think we've done it with sodium bicarb. We've done it on the 160 with the soda ash, but one of those, heart-wrenching things is when you walk in and your tank looks like a glass of milk.
A lot of people have seen this. Don't be one of them. Another thing is test kit schedule, right? So the only way I'm really going to know my magnesium is too high or too low is because I did my test kit. Raise your hand how often you do those test kits. 30 days, a week, every day. I will say with alkalinity being the number one, nothing made me more in tune with the tank than knowing alkalinity every single day. I know a pulse on how everything is going. When I got that little Hannah checker, it changed the whole world for me. So in that spirit, think about how often you want to do those test kits, because if you're talking about absolute attention to the tank, me and the tank are in tune, the test kit is the way that you would do that with chemistry.
Yeah, another thing we could do is walk by and maybe you notice that your jugs are empty or your reservoir's empty. This is dosing jugs, meaning they're empty, meaning your chemistry's probably off in that it hasn't been getting alkalinity, calcium, but also your reservoir, whether it's the reservoir for those jugs, reservoir for the ATO is probably the big one here. I walk by and I notice that my ATO reservoir is empty. Sometimes you wouldn't even know it because maybe you're at work and your reservoir drained, and then your little alarm went off, the pump stopped working, and it shut your ATO off. Well, when I get home, I have no idea that my ATO failed unless I looked at the reservoir. Empty reservoirs, empty jugs, one of the ways that I have absolute attention on my tank.
This happens all the time.
Oh, yes.
Like you just hear, why does that pump keep going? And you just hear it whirring, and it was supposed to only be on for a minute, and it's on. You can go check it. A lot of you have heard my story about the Kalkwasser. I dumped 10 gallons of Kalkwasser in there because the auto top-off failed early on in my reefing career. And the reason that I was able to save the tank, though, is even in my sleep, I heard the gurgle of that thing, and internally I knew that I had just filled up that thing today. I mean, there's 10 gallons in there. Run, save your tank, Ryan. And so, yeah, funky noises, another one of all of these things. And also, digital monitor. Not all of you use these things, and I'm not talking about an Apex in this case.
Right.
I'm talking about those little pinpoint guys.
Yeah, there's a pH monitor. You can walk by and notice the pH of your tank. I believe they have a standalone salinity monitor that you could get, maybe in a different industry, this industry. But these are different things. That if you have this little standalone pinpoint monitor, it's got a place for you to hang the thing on the wall. It can make it look good, but it's just one of those things that, like the temperature, I can walk by and instantly get a readout of certain parameters, not all the parameters, and that's kind of a problem.
It's interesting because I actually had one of these on my first tank, and I was told I need to pay attention to pH, but nobody told me why. Right? So when you look at it and it says 7.8, you can just say slow growth. If it says 8.3, high growth. And one of those things that most people haven't connected yet is the amount of people. If you have a big party at your house, a big Super Bowl party, you might walk up there and see, you know what? Oh my gosh, man, 7.0. All that carbon dioxide that we're breathing in the house, man, open up the window before the tank goes, And the amount of tank crashes I've heard of at restaurants and other places because they had too many people in there and the pH plummeted is all legitimate. So having a digital monitor like that, if you're not gonna have a controller, absolutely valuable. Temperature as well as pH and chemistry.
The alternative to absolute attention for catching chemistry issues is the real-time monitoring and notifications. Again, I think this is where our hobby has really made leaps and bounds as far as the technology that we have to monitor all these different chemistry parameters: pH, temperature, ORP, salinity, even have alkalinity, calcium, magnesium. There's phosphates out there. There's a whole slew of different tools that we can use to help with catching these chemistry issues.
Most of them connected to an aquarium controller of some type.
Yeah.
But again, man, it's going to send a push notification. It's going to send an email. It's going to send a text message. And you can actually even set up in a lot of phones that the text message coming from that has a really persistent, loud noise. Right? Yeah. Because again, man, a lot of the times when this is happening, it's happening while I'm sleeping. Which is, for me, 8 hours a day. And so for a lot of people, man, you actually would want to wake up. And, outside of that, you can set up your, alarms like a horn or your adaptive Reef thing. You can figure out how to have this wake you up and say, come save me. One of the things is the automated testers, right? So this is like the Tridents of the world, right? I think there's other ones out there too, but I'm gonna test alkalinity, I'm gonna test calcium and magnesium, and it will tell me when I'm overdosing one of those things. Prior to that, it was how often did I test with my test kit or hope that something else like a pH probe or something would catch it. But I never really knew what my actual alkalinity is and is it trending low, trending high. I would only really catch like real peak issues with a pH probe.
Yeah, this is one that if we had this technology set up on like your E170 or the BRS160, when we overdosed sodium bicarbonate, it didn't have a pH effect, which we were monitoring, in which case it was something like this automated tester where it's monitoring alkalinity, and I can actually set warning triggers or alarms when I'm above a certain alkalinity level or below, or even calcium or magnesium. I can set these things up. So now, you were able to catch some of these issues even if another leading indicator is not telling you that something's happening.
There's really simple and mundane things too, like what happens if my dosing vessel is empty, right? I wouldn't have always known necessarily, meaning my alkalinity and my calcium are about to plummet because I'm now dosing air to the tank. Well, not so much anymore because you can use your controller actually to tell you two things. A lot of them will actually you can tell it, that it's dosed 1,000 milliliters and the container is 1,000 milliliters and you should go change it at this point. But you can also set it up with level switches, either mechanical or optical, and say, hey, my dosing vessel is empty, come fill me. That means not just calcium alkalinity or magnesium, but also like your auto top-off container. How many times do you know that your auto top-off container is actually empty because you heard the gurgle or you saw the water level low in the tank, that super visual attention to detail.
Yeah, so with the ATO, this is along with the probes too, is that I have the sensors to tell me when it's empty. I have the built-in features of some of these aquarium controllers. But another part of this is that for salinity issues like ATOs, it's going to have a salinity issue. My salinity probe can actually start to see it's trending, the increase in salinity, meaning that my ATO is empty and my tank's evaporating and the salt is getting more concentrated, or quite the opposite, that I'm dumping a whole bunch of fresh water in and it's diluting the salt and I'm watching my salinity trend downward.
We had that happen on a system here, actually. It was a rock holding system a while ago, where one day I walked up to the tank and it was freshwater now. And literally the auto top off was just a float valve, and the tank had sprung a leak, and there happened to be a crack in the cement below it, and it was just dumping water out slowly and pumping fresh water in, so much that a 400-gallon bin had turned over so much it hit to zero. There must be a giant sinkhole under there now. But yeah, I would have known if the salinity monitor was on there telling me, come save the tank.
The next thing we want to be aware of when S hits the fan is flow, and your return pump might be jammed. Maybe a snail kamikazed itself inside of it. Maybe power head's on, off, or running slow because it needs maintenance. Maybe your return pump's on or off and the flow rate's changed, or a power head's running dry and spraying water everywhere. Also, return pumps can just run dry and burn up, but flow is something that we also need to be in tune to, because it is a core life support function for your tank.
All right, absolute attention, me and the tank, psychic link. We know what each other's doing anywhere in the planet. And stuff is dying, actually. I walked up, I saw stuff is dying, of course. Outside of that, though, water everywhere. This could be all kinds of different things, man. It could be a tube popped off a return pump and it's spraying water all over the place. It could be some of the plumbing went down. It could be a bumped power head that fell off and is like spraying water up. It could be even the skimmers like going mad and spraying foam all over the place. Absolute attention is I walked up and saw a mess.
Yeah, tied to that is a low water level. So we're talking flow, not necessarily just flow from the power heads, but flow through your filtration, flow through your tank, flow through your sump. Low water level is one of the lead indicators, especially when I got a low water level in my tank. I've walked by a tank so many times and seen the natural dry, crusty line from the water level, but I've seen it dropped like an inch below that, and the first thing you think of is, where'd all that water go?
Yeah, visually you walk up and it could be like below the overflow. Well, now I know the return pump's just done.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like what happened? So I had to actually be there to notice it. If you see that, it's probably an indication that your return pump needs maintenance, which is right before it just stops.
The precursor to low water level is those weird gurgly noises, water flow noises. All of us reefers have been trained to, when we hear water or hear water noises, everybody goes crazy and perks their ears up, in which case, some weird noises you're going to see when the water level's low are here. When the water level's low, you can hear the suction of the pump from the return pump. It's drawing in air, if it's not one of those smart pumps that can notice that it's running air already. But even from the power heads, you hear weird noises, especially like the vortex sucking noise when the water level starts to get closer to the top of the pump, and now the pump is creating this vortex and sucking it in. You'll probably hear gurgles from the overflow, all of these weird noises that you've spent hours tuning and adjusting your tank so that it wouldn't make a noise. Now you're hearing noises. That's absolute attention.
Another one is the pumps look dirty.
Simple as that.
Visually, I walk up to the thing and I see, wow, it is covered in coralline, it is covered in algae, and it just looks dirty. Well, that's probably an indication that it is slowing down in flow as well. And the same thing with your return pump, man. A dirty pump probably is either going to stop working soon or at least slowing down, and a visual indication, if I'm giving absolute attention to my tank, they should do something about it so it doesn't catch me when I'm not paying attention. Yeah,
one that I've caught before with absolute attention and lack of flow is the corals themselves. Not just SPS, but even corals like your LPS, your euphyllias, your gonnies, your softies, things that every time you look at your tank, you kind of get an idea of where the flow is or how it should be by which way they're moving. This is an indication that pumps, like your pumps are dirty and then the flow is low, they're completely off. I didn't find that one of the pumps were completely off in the 160 until I started noticing that one of the canary, SPS colonies started losing tissue at the very bottom, and it was kind of RTN or STN and all the way up to from the bottom. And as soon as I stuck my hand in the tank, I realized, oh, that gyre's not working anymore.
Yeah, you can see it in a couple of different ways too. I often see it because the sand isn't moving around anymore. You'll also see it because all of a sudden there's like cyano in the sand that wasn't there before. So visual attention, you can catch a lot of things with flow and return pumps.
So much like temperature, you can walk by and stick your hand in the test in front of the pump, do the hand test, see if things are moving, stick them in front of the return line, see if it's kind of pushing. I kind of have an idea of how fast or how much pressure my hand should be getting from the pumps. That's one way to, again, kind of get in there. But, as far as return pumps, some of the better power heads and pumps automatically solve running dry by realizing they're running dry and then shutting themselves off.
Some of the first ones to do that, I think of the Reef Octo that has a little float switch on it, and that thing will turn it off. But a lot of today's DC pumps will automatically recognize it's just spinning too fast and just shut itself off. I think the Wave power heads do that as well. So they just know, you know what, something's wrong, and I'll solve it in the absence. Again, now not a controller, but some of the gear that we're using just operating more intelligently on its own. All right, real-time notifications, meaning I'm sleeping, I'm maybe just in the other room, but I didn't notice. I'm at work, whatever it is, I want to know about it. I want to know that my tank's flow is jacked, the return pump is jacked, and it's hitting the fan. In this case, power monitoring seems to be the number one thing. It was a surprise to me. I didn't know the value of it until I really dug in. But in this case, today's controllers, each one of these outlets is, they're actually monitoring the power. And there's a very predictable amount of power that each one of these pieces of equipment should take, and it tracks it. If it falls outside of that, it tells you. So in this case, it could be as simple as it just broke, man. The return pump, the power head, isn't taking power anymore.
Zero.
That means that the power block broke. It could be the snail kamikaze. It could be all kinds of different things, but it's just not taking power at all. It could also be as simple as one of the cords wiggled its way out. You just didn't know, right? And it shortened out. But the cool part is it also tells you, hey, you know what, I'm dirty, fix me. This was one of the surprises along the way, which is if a pump is dirty, meaning it's getting jammed up, the motor spins slower and it takes less power. So if it's supposed to take 50 watts and it's actually only taking 25 watts, it's not only saying you're only getting half the flow that you paid for, it's saying, come save me before I just stop working altogether. Right? And that isn't really something that you're going to notice unless you're like doing that hand dipstick method all the time or the visual that looks dirty. These are things that, preempting it. Knowing when to clean it is preempting it, and even better than that, what if it looks dirty and it doesn't need to be cleaned? I want to know that too.
We also talked the component of flow and the sumps and the water level in the sump, primarily towards your return pump and when it is working or not working. Like we said, there's smart pumps out there that can recognize that they're running dry on their own and shut themselves off. But we're talking monitoring alerts and notifications real time. In which case, if you're going to use an aquarium controller like the Apex, there's the Core out there that has a myriad of different types of alerts that it can tell you that is wrong, specifically when it's just not running or running slower. Along with that are those level indicators, optical sensors, float switches, these things that you can plug in addition to power monitoring or an automatic shutoff pump. I can tell before it even comes close to hitting drying my pump out that, hey, my water level is a little lower than normal, and here in the next few hours, you can expect a dry pump, a dry sump. Yeah,
it's great that those other smart pumps will tell you that they stop working, or will just turn off if they stop working, not necessarily tell you. But the problem is you save the pump, but the life support between my tank and the sump is turned off.
Right.
Not good enough, right? I actually want to know about that immediately. Related to that is actually a flow meter, right? So on your returns, you can actually put one of those meters on it. It'll tell you how many gallons an hour it's doing. That is probably the best indication that water is moving through it or not moving through it. And especially if you have something like a UV filter where the flow rate really, really matters. How would you, I don't think there is such a thing as absolute attention to detail with the tank and knowing what the flow is going through your UV. It actually takes a meter, to do this, or doing the bucket test pretty darn frequently.
Yeah.
So in this case, flow meters, but there's also leak sensors. So like again, the plumbing is spraying water all over. Well, the way we would have noticed that before is the puddle that's on the floor that's getting bigger every moment. Well, the leak sensor will not only tell you, hey man, this thing is leaking, setting off. In this case, I don't want to destroy my floors. I don't want to destroy my home. I don't want to kill the tank. And I want this alarm, visual, audible, phone. I want everything blowing up. But more to the point, in this case, man, control's really sweet because I would actually like to shut off the equipment that could be the offender, the skimmer that's going crazy, shut off the return pump that maybe the tubing got out of whack or disconnected. So in those cases, man, leak sensors, saving like potentially thousands or more dollars in your house and having to do repairs on it. Also the tank and also fire hazard in some case, and then actually solving it in real time. Email, push, app notifications, audible, visual, all of these things telling me, come save me, because I don't really actually have that psychic link.
Lighting's next, another critical component of life support that we want to know if it's working or not working. Lights can get stuck on or forgot on. They can get stuck off or forgot off. You can get them unplugged, par, or settings can be changed. There could be just software error or it's just dead. Oftentimes you get a long time to notice when it's off. When it's on or stuck on, far less time. And when it's a settings error, like you normally run at 50% intensity and your lights are at 100 and my eyes really can't tell that difference, you could have just as little as maybe even a day to notice and fix it.
All right, absolute attention to light. In this case, I don't know, this one's a little easier, but you might be surprised by a couple of things that'll catch you off guard. Obviously, stuff's dying. You can look at it's bleaching, all that kind of thing, man. Well, it's probably light related. But the first one would be visual as well, is the light's on or off when it shouldn't be. Like every morning I wake up at 8 a.m. and the light just should be on and it's not, or the inverse. But you know what? It seems really obvious that way, but what happens if you're not normally around when either one of those things happen? So
it's a lot of the time.
But if it's on every day at 8 a.m., but like it was really actually on since midnight last night, and I wouldn't know the difference. So sometimes ramping things up and down gives you that, or changing the time that these things are on to different times. So like, you know what? I want the thing to actually be off when I go to bed and off when I wake up so I don't run into this. At the same time, man, those are the times that I'm around the tank and I want to see it. So, absolute attention to detail has a little bit more to it than you think.
On the other side of the spectrum, real-time monitoring and notifications. This is all power monitoring. Your lights are on when they shouldn't be, or they're overpowered, or they're underpowered. These are things that you can do and solve with power monitoring. And I can set these types of text messages, alarms, and push emails, phone notifications, so on and so forth, to tell me, hey, your light's on when it shouldn't be, or hey, you're running at 50% more power than what you normally would. And these are things that I wouldn't know otherwise. But there are parts, some of these controllers, and most controllers these days, have things like, feed modes or maintenance modes or temperature modes and switches where if I wanted to turn on my lights and show off my lights to my friends or do the disco ball effect or whatever my lights can do, I can actually set my program or set up my aquarium controller so that I have a button that says it's only going to run for a certain amount of time. Or I have a temp that says, if my tank temperature is too hot, shut this thing off. Switches that you can walk up and push a button and say, hey, turn my lights on for 5 minutes, show everybody, and then they'll automatically come off. But you can automate this stuff so that, human error, you're kind of pulling a lot of that out of the equation.
Human error, the #1 problem with lights being, I turned it on for my buddies, I turned it on for myself, and I just forgot to turn it off. I turned the lights up for some reason or down for some reason, and I forgot to send it back to where it was supposed to be. This is really about that power monitoring or having those feed modes or temporary modes where you can walk up and push a button, it will do that thing and then automatically turn off. And then better yet, if anything goes wrong, phone, email, push notifications, tells me so I can do something about it.
Next component, water quality and the pollution of the tank, the filtration of the tank. Maybe your water's getting polluted. Maybe your auto feeder's going crazy dumping food in. Maybe some little person's going crazy dumping food in also. Skimmer's not working, fuge isn't working, filter socks aren't working, roller mat's not working. All of these filter related issues, even if a pump fell and landed nosedive in your sump or in your sand bed and blowing brown gunk all over the place, these are things that we want to know if and when it happens, and we can do so by being in tune to the tank or with real-time monitoring and alerts.
All right, absolute attention to the tank. You wouldn't think maybe that you can catch this with absolute attention to the water quality per se, but you know what? Obviously stuff is dying. You know, one coral, in this case, now you wouldn't be seeing like a mass die off, but you know, canary corals are starting to show the, you know, polyps retracting or, you know, losing little bits of tissue, or even one colony died, but it's starting to go in the wrong direction. More common is actually browning of the corals, which sadly is really hard to reverse, or at least takes a good period of time. Weird noises in the tank, nitrate and phosphate tests. So nitrate and phosphate are the indicators of polluted water. Not only is nitrate and phosphate are nutrients, like the definition of polluted water in almost every water application, they're actually just kind of like the key markers of overall pollution of the water. An ORP monitor is actually a good indication that the water is getting polluted. Now ORP in this case, you'd have a little monitor like this one where you walk up and just see it. It's not active control, you'd have to see it with your own eyes, but in that case, you know, ORP is the balance of oxidants like cleaners in the tank and the amount of organics and garbage in the tank. Well, if the amount of oxidants are stable and you just keep dumping more and more garbage, or little fingers are thrown in because it's fun to feed the fish, or that pump came down and blowed it out, well, the ORP is going to plummet, saying, hey man, you should do something about it. You wouldn't necessarily have noticed it with your eye, but the meter will tell you.
A little more simple test than that is just a white bucket test while you're doing water changes. Fill up a white bucket with tank water. If it's yellow, brownish, it's dirty. Simple as that. And you can implement things to clean up the water. Dead chaeto, if I'm walking by and I see my refugium is just mushy, dead chaeto, the light's stuck on or it was stuck off, in which case, you know, dead chaeto is not removing nitrate and phosphate or nutrients, it's actually adding them back in because it's dying off. Empty skimmer cup is one that nobody really would imagine to go look at. A lot of times we look at our skimmer cup and it's full, means empty it, and that is working. But what if you haven't emptied your skimmer cup in 2 weeks or a month, or maybe there's just not enough organics in there for it to pull out? Could be that your skimmer's just not performing, and now organics or nutrients are actually building up in the tank.
I think that's a super common one actually. If the skimmer cup isn't full, the nutrients are building up in the tank. All right, but what about real-time monitoring and control? Let me know right away. And ORP is probably one of those ways. Again, not the perfect science, but it's going to tell you of major changes to large amounts of organics that are happening in the tank, or even sometimes trends, as long as those oxidants are the same. So in this case, your favorite controller will have an ORP probe, and you can set it up to give you notifications when anything's totally out of whack.
Yeah, there's a lot of automated testers that are coming on the market now. In which case some of them are starting to work with phosphates and nitrate testing automatically, in which case it's doing this test for you without you having to be there, meaning that I can actually be away and I can get a phosphate test and find out that somebody dumped a ton of food in my tank, and now it's kind of deteriorating and adding organics to the tank.
One of the cool things I think about those automated testers, I think Mastertronic is one of the ones that does alkalinity, or excuse me, phosphate and nitrate, is most people don't actually test these things very often, right? And one of the pieces is, I don't really care what your nitrate and phosphate level is. The only thing that's really important is it's not perpetually rising. So if every single time you test it, it's going up, man, that is a path to nowhere good, right? So if you think that 1 part per million nitrate's good, or you think 10's good, that's fine. As long as the levels are stable, you'll probably be okay in most cases. But man, when they're just perpetually rising and you're getting those real-time notifications, it's telling you, up your filtration game or stop feeding so much. One of those two things you need to do. So really the power, or not the Mastertronic and probably other controllers that will come out, give you that real-time testing and notification.
Common theme here, power alarms when we're talking about real-time monitoring and notifications. Power alarms, for the skimmer, if it's pulling less than normal wattage than it normally does, I don't even have to go down there and look at the skimmer cup. It's probably not full. In which case I can go up there and change my skimmer or adjust it or clean it what I have to. Same with the fuge light. That's what we did on the BRS 160. We had monitored the fuge light because some magic fairy in the middle of the night would come in and turn the light on or turn it off, and we didn't even know it wasn't working. But these power alarms said, hey, you should be at X amount of watts, and you're not right now, so do something about it. Then you have water level alarms. You can use water level alarms for your skimmer, for the water level alarms for the filter socks. When your filter socks are starting to get clogged, or maybe even your roll mat, I can have a little optical sensor in that chamber, and when the water level rises because the water's not going through the sock anymore, I get an alarm saying, hey, water's above your filter socks. I can also put that same optical sensor or a secondary magnet one on the side of my skimmer cup, so I can stop my skimmer from overfilling and putting all that dirty, nasty poo back in my tank.
Also, keep up your maintenance. If it's full, I want to take that poo out so it can take up more poo tomorrow. All right, so why didn't we bring up power failure? Because the power goes out. All of this went down, and you may or may not know it because you're not around. This is an episode of its own. Solve power failures. This is about preparing beforehand, because you'll see why after has so much lower success rates.